This one, well, it's very similar to one we did earlier. Graph the linear function. Now this is in function notation, but it's still y equals form or slope-intercept form. So once again, we don't have any work to do. All the information we need is in the problem. So remember, you start with your intercept. Which number is the intercept, the half or the 8? The 8. So I'm going to go and put a dot on my 8. Try to put a dot on the 8. I think that's as close as I'm going to get. And then my slope of 1/2, oops, tells me to go up 1 and right 2 from the point I've already graphed. Don't go back to the origin. So from my 8, go up 1 and over 2. Up 1 and over 2, and you're going to land somewhere, well, it should be what, 2, 9? And then draw your line. And that's your graph. So again, no work on that one, which makes that one super easy. You just have to recognize that it's in slope-intercept form. If it's in y equals form, it's in slope-intercept form. All right, let's look at 15. Find the slope of the line containing the pair of points. So we don't have to write an equation. We just have to find the slope. So the slope formula, and this is also on your formula sheet if you don't remember it, it's y sub 2 minus y sub 1 over x sub 2 minus x sub 1. Really all that means is subtract your y's, subtract your x's. Just be consistent. So my y's, I have -4 and -7. I can go -4 minus -7 or -7 minus -4. There's really no advantage over one way or the other because they're both negative. So I'm just going to say -7 minus -4. If I go -7 minus -4, then I have to go 3 minus 9. You have to be consistent. So -7 minus -4 is actually -7 plus 4. So -3. And then 3 minus 9 is -6. So it looks like my slope ends up being positive 1/2. Now, if this would have asked me to write an equation, then I would take that slope, pick one of my points, and drop it into point-slope form to find an equation. But they just want the slope, so this is all you have to do here. The reason why I'm telling you that's a pretty common mistake for students to just, oh, they think equation, they see 2 points, they think they need an equation. So make sure you read the problem. Now, because one of our options up there is slope is undefined, what would have had to have happened for us to get an answer that would be undefined?
Zeros.
If I would have got a 0 instead of -6 on the bottom, that's undefined because you can't divide by 0. So most of the time you're going to be able to go ahead and divide or simplify your ratio at the end, whichever. But if we would have gotten a 0 in the denominator, that's when it's undefined. Okay. 16. Find the indicated outputs. Now we've already done one like this, so there's another one on the test. Your function's a little bit different. It's got a squared in it. I don't think the one before had a squared. So the first one, f of 0, that means wherever I see an x, I replace it with a 0. So f of 0 is going to be what? Oops. I need to put a 0 there. 2 times 0 squared minus 3 times 0. What's that end up being? 0. So yeah, f of 0 equals 0. Meaning when my input or my x is 0, my output or my y is also 0. And then we would plug in -1. And this is where you have to be careful because you're squaring and you got negatives involved. So when we plug in -1, wherever we see our x, we have to do order of operations. So we have to square the -1 first. -1 times -1 is 1. 1 times 2, so this is going to be 2. And then negative 3, you can think of that as a minus 3 or a negative 3. I think it's easier to think of it as a negative 3. Negative 3 times negative 1. Positive 3. So it looks like we get 5. So f of negative 1 equals 5. If you think of it as a subtraction problem, then you would do 3 times negative 1 is negative 3, but then you'd have to think of it minus negative 3, which would then be plus 3, which is 5. So you just have to think of it, it's a little bit more complicated. So that's why I like to think of it as a negative. I think it's easier to work with. And then finally, the last one, 2. If I plug in 2, actually I'm not going to have enough space for that. So when I plug in 2, let's see here, 2 times 2 squared minus 3 times 2. I get 2 squared, which is 4. 4 times 2 is 8. And then 3 times 2 is 6. So it looks like I get 2. So when I plug in 2, I also get 2. So f of 2 equals 2. So it looks like 0, 5, and 2 are my answers. Uh-huh.
You did the square first, right?
Correct.
And 1 times 1 is a positive 1.
Correct. Correct. Yep. Okay. 17 is just like what I was talking about on the previous problem. Because it says find an equation of the line containing the given pair of points. So the one that we did before just said find the slope. This one says find an equation of the line. Well, guess what we have to do first? In order to find an equation, we have to find the slope, because we have either point-slope form or slope-intercept form. Both of them have the word slope. So when I have 2 points, I'm going to find the slope first. So I'm going to subtract my y's. So if I go 8 minus 5, okay, so in this one, slope, 8 minus 5 over 12 minus 4. I don't know what that's doing. 3/8. Okay. Now we're going to take that slope and pick either point. You don't need to do both. I'm just going to pick the 4, 5 because it's smaller numbers. It's the only reason why I'm picking it. And I'm going to do y minus the y1 equals m times x minus x1. So y minus my y coordinate, so 5, my slope of 3/8, x minus my x coordinate. And now, because they want me to put it in slope-intercept form, I got to get y by itself, so I'm going to distribute. That's going to give me 3/8 x, and 3/8 times 4 is 3/4? 3 halves. 3 halves. You're right, 3 halves. And then I have to do what? Add 5 to both sides. Add it here. And add it here. And that's going to give me...
Positive 7
No, you're fine. Y equals 3/8 x plus 7 halves. And that is correct. So this one, again, it said find an equation. So don't stop at slope, because that is a common mistake. Make sure you answer the question. And since it wants us to find the equation, we still have to find the slope to begin with, and then use the slope in one of our points to write an equation.